Hi!
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you.
Oh, it's okay.
Valentine's Day is supposed to be about love, grand gestures, vulnerability, intimacy. But what happens when vulnerability is weaponized? In 2014's Creep, directed by Patrick Bryce and co-written by Bryce and Mark Duplass, and released by Blumhouse Studios, gave us one of the most quietly devastating portrayals of relational manipulation ever put to screen. It's a love story, but think less Taylor Swifty countryside wedding in the spring, and more please share your location with a trusted contact. On paper, Creep is about a videographer named Aaron who answers a Craigslist ad. And if there's one thing horror movies have taught us, it's that Craigslist has never once led to peace and prosperity. He meets Yosef, eccentric, lonely, terminally ill. Yosef claims he wants someone to document a video diary for his unborn son, Buddy. Aw, that's sweet. He frames the project as deeply personal, presenting himself as vulnerable and unsuspecting. Aw, that's also sweet. Soon after filming begins, Yosef's behavior begins to take an unsettling turn. He insists on filming intimate and emotionally charged moments, frequently blurring boundaries and placing Aaron in uncomfortable situations. One of the first scenes involved Yosef being filmed in a bathtub while speaking directly to the camera as if addressing his child. During this odd scene, Yosef speaks candidly about death and casually jokes about ending his life. While briefly stepping away, Aaron discovers a disturbing wolf mask in the cabin, which Yosef later introduces to us as Peach Fuzz. Because nothing says loving father like a taxidermy nightmare from Spirit Halloween's clearance section. Yosef claims the mask has sentimental value and intends to pass it down to his child. Sure, buddy. Sure. Now, let's take a pause here, because a lot of whack shit is happening on screen, and you're probably wondering, how the hell is this romantic? What the hell do you have me watching? Stay with me, guys. We're in the this is uncomfortable on purpose portion of the program. That would be the point. The intense feeling that you're getting as you're hearing this, that sudden wave of information coming at you so fast that you can't even process my words in time. The overload of information is about coercive control. It is about how abusers manufacture intimacy faster than their victims can process it. Yosef overwhelms Aaron with intensity almost immediately into the project, oversharing, force bonding, pet names, declarations of connection, oscillating between friendly charm and unsettling intensity, frequently invading Aaron's personal space and staging sudden scares that he dismisses as jokes. Yosef repeatedly emphasizes honesty and emotional openness, yet his stories begin to get inconsistent. Aaron becomes increasingly uneasy, but continues to film out of financial desperation and a desire to complete the job without confrontation. And just like that, Aaron falls into Yosef's control. Yosef performs emotional nakedness to accelerate closeness, and this mirrors a classic IPV tactic, love bombing. In many abusive relationships, the early stage is intoxicating. You feel chosen, seen, needed. Yosef tells Aaron that he's special, that they connect, that this meeting is meaningful, which sounds romantic until you realize you've known this man for 6 hours and he's acting like you co-signed a mortgage together. And because Aaron is polite, because he doesn't want to offend, he stays. That politeness becomes the opening, because nothing fuels coercive control like social conditioning and the fear of being rude. The real villain? Conflict avoidance. Yosef repeatedly pushes boundaries, socially, physically, emotionally. He later invites Aaron to dinner at a local restaurant, where the conversation turns deeply personal. Yosef asks probing questions about shame and vulnerability, encouraging Aaron to share personal and embarrassing details from his past. Yosef then reveals that he's researched and stalked Aaron prior to hiring him, admitting that he observed him without his knowledge. I know that in a relationship you're supposed to take initiative in the beginning, but sir, that's not initiative, that is a felony. Although Yosef frames his confession as remorseful and seeks forgiveness, the revelation heightens Aaron's sense of danger. Aaron attempts to leave that evening, but Yosef persuades him to stay longer, appealing to their perceived emotional connection to keep him there. Every time Aaron tries to leave, Yosef reels him back in. Through guilt, through affection, through fear. This is how coercive control works, not constant violence, but escalation, small discomforts that become normalized. IPV is rarely explosive at first. It's incremental. Creep captures that incremental erosion beautifully, especially in the context of intimate partner violence. Aaron has dozens of opportunities to leave. He escapes Yosef's hold after spiking his drink with Benadryl, but past his escape, Aaron begins experiencing ongoing fear and paranoia. He receives unsettling packages in the mail from Yosef, despite never having shared his address. These items suggest that Yosef has continued to monitor and stalk him. Aaron contacts law enforcement, but due to limited identifying information, they are unable to intervene, which unfortunately is one of the more realistic parts of the film. One night, Yosef appears outside Aaron's home and later enters while Aaron is asleep, further demonstrating his continued control and surveillance. We are no longer at red flags, we are at a red quilt. But this brings me to a common question people ask survivors. Why didn't you just leave? Creep answers that. Yosef spends that time when Aaron leaves, alternating between warmth and threat, apologizes, self-victimizes, cries, promises change, and on top of that, when Aaron goes to seek outside help, law enforcement, although hailed to help in these situations, fails. And Yosef still knows where Aaron lives. He knows where he sleeps and encroaches on that space knowing he has control. This reinforcement is neurologically powerful. It creates trauma bonds. Your brain does not care that the red flags are screaming, it just wants consistency. Yosef doesn't need to trap Aaron physically, he traps him emotionally by encroaching on him because he feels a sense of entitlement to Aaron's space. The final park scene is quiet. Aaron receives a final message from Yosef requesting a meeting in a public place to reconcile and make amends. Hoping to put the ordeal behind him, Aaron agrees to meet Yosef at a nearby park during the daytime. As precaution, Aaron records himself while waiting and prepares to call for help if necessary. While seated alone in the park, Aaron is attacked from behind and killed by Yosef. There's no chase. There's no screaming. Aaron agreed to meet Yosef again. But why? Because abusers are not monstrous 100% of the time. They are charming, persuasive, believable. And sometimes, they're the last person you expect. The scariest thing in this movie isn't the axe. It's the calendar invite. The violence isn't chaotic. It's calmed. It's planned. Which often is how intimate partner violence escalates. The film concludes by revealing that Yosef, now going by a different name, has repeatedly committed similar acts. He stores recordings of Aaron's death alongside numerous other videotapes, indicating a long-standing pattern of manipulation and violence. In this final moment, Yosef receives a call from a new potential victim, suggesting that the cycle will continue. Our mystery man expresses little to no remorse in this video, just cold calculation before we end the film on a haunting note, that we really had no idea who this man was at the end of the day. Not even his real name. He feels little to no remorse, and he will do it again. On Valentine's Day, we celebrate intensity. We romanticize obsession. We've all heard the "I can't live without you" and thought that was devotion instead of a warning label. We praise grand gestures. We equate jealousy with passion. Creep strips that illusion bare. Yosef's intensity is entitlement. If he met you yesterday and is already calling you his soulmate, that's not fate, that's pacing issues. His vulnerability is manipulation. He directs the film, emotionally and literally. The film becomes a cautionary tale, not about trusting strangers, but about recognizing red flags when they're wrapped in affection. While Yosef and Aaron are not romantic partners in the traditional sense, the film constructs a manufactured intimacy between the two characters that parallels intimate partner relationships. Yosef accelerates emotional closeness in forced intimacy, demands personal disclosure frequency, and frames their connection as personally meaningful. This forced artificial intimacy enables Yosef to exert control over Aaron in ways that resemble intimate partner violence dynamics, particularly those involving coercive control and emotional abuse. Additionally, Yosef references past relationships which suggest a history of abusive behavior extending beyond the events of the film. Although these relationships are not shown directly, they provide context for his pattern of behavior and further situate the narrative within an IPV framework. For example, Andrea. The reveal of Andrea is haunting because there is a whole story structured around her being Yosef's wife and the mother of Buddy. When it's revealed that she is in fact his sister, this opens a lot of doors for the context behind Yosef's behavior. But I digress. Yosef is the primary antagonist of Creep and functions as the abuser within the film's power and control dynamic. He presents himself as emotionally vulnerable, terminally ill, and in need of a relationship, using these narratives to quickly establish a sense of intimacy and trust within Aaron. It becomes clear that he carefully curated this persona to elicit sympathy and compliance. He demonstrates a pattern of manipulative behaviors consistent with coercive control, including deception, boundary violations, and intimidation. Yosef's behavior escalates over time, moving from psychological manipulation to overt violence. He repeatedly positions himself as the victim in his own narrative, minimizing the fear and harm he causes others. The film ultimately reveals that Yosef's actions are part of a repeated pattern involving multiple victims, indicating that his behavior is habitual more than situational. Within an IPV framework, Yosef represents an abuser who relies on emotional manipulation and control rather than sustained physical force, demonstrating how violence can be preceded and enabled by psychological dominance. Aaron is the film's protagonist and primary victim in this framework. He is a freelance videographer experiencing financial insecurity, which makes him all the more vulnerable to Yosef's manipulation. Aaron initially attempts to maintain professional boundaries and tries on multiple occasions to leave, but gradually becomes emotionally entangled through Yosef's persistent demands for closeness and reassurance. He frequently suppresses his discomfort in order to appear polite, compassionate, and professional. These responses eerily mirror common survival strategies used by individuals experiencing abuse if they feel intimate partner violence may be an impending possibility. Think of it like a chameleon. Chameleons blend into their environment in order to avoid predators. This can even be the case when a person wears a mask or a persona. Throughout the film, Aaron exhibits signs of increasing distress. These behaviors include anxiety, fear, and hypervigilance. Despite recognizing the danger Yosef poses, Aaron struggles to disengage fully, mainly because of the man's highly manipulative nature. From an IPV perspective, Aaron's experience illustrates how victims may remain in harmful situations due to manipulation, guilt, confusion, and hope for resolution or closure. While Creep is framed as a found-footage horror film, it could be examined as a depiction of intimate partner violence through the lens of the power and control wheel. Although the relationship between Yosef and Aaron is not romantic, the film constructs an artificial intimacy that allows abusive dynamics to develop rapidly. Yosef's behavior reflects patterns of coercive control commonly identified in IPV, demonstrating how abuse can emerge through emotional manipulation, intimidation, and isolation, rather than through formal partnership or immediate physical violence. One of the more prominent tactics Yosef employs is intimidation. His behavior alternates between friendliness and menace, which keeps Aaron in a consistent state of uncertainty. Sudden changes in tone, unexpected appearances, and threatening body language are deliberately used to communicate danger without the need for explicit threats. This form of uncomfortable intimidation establishes Yosef's dominance and discourages Aaron from asserting boundaries or relieving the situation. The utilization of stalking and surveillance later on further enforces the fear-based control. Emotional abuse also plays a central role in Yosef's interaction with Aaron. Yosef repeatedly frames Aaron's discomfort as cruelty, suggesting that Aaron lacks empathy, while he expresses concern or attempts to disengage, essentially gaslighting the shit out of this guy. By positioning himself as misunderstood, Yosef shifts responsibility for the situation onto Aaron, gaslighting him to question his own reactions. This manipulation undermines Aaron's confidence and contributes to his continued compliance despite growing fear and anxiety. In this vein, Yosef frequently minimizes and denies the harm caused by his actions while shifting blame onto Aaron. Behaviors that frighten or unsettle Aaron are dismissed as jokes or expressions of honesty. When confronted, Yosef portrays himself as the victim, emphasizing his loneliness, fear, or emotional pain. This tactic serves to invalidate Aaron's experiences and reinforces the idea that Yosef's behavior is justified or unavoidable. Isolation is another key tactic used by Yosef. The remote cabin and setting physically separates Aaron from sources of support and limits his ability to leave quickly. Yosef's control over the environment, including transportation and access to communication, further restricts Aaron's autonomy. Even after Aaron escapes the cabin, Yosef's continued presence through his life through surveillance and unwanted contact demonstrates that isolation can persist beyond physical proximity. Aaron remains psychologically isolated, unable to fully escape Yosef's influence. Power imbalances are evident throughout the film. Yosef controls the narrative of their interaction, dictates the pace of the day, and sets the emotional tone of their relationship. His confidence and assertiveness contrast sharply at Aaron's politeness and desire to remain professional. Yosef exploits this imbalance, knowing that Aaron's need for income and his reluctance to appear rude or judgmental make him more susceptible for manipulation. Rather than relying on direct threats, Yosef uses coercion through emotional pressure and implied danger. His emotional volatility functions as an unspoken warning that resistance may lead to escalation. Moments of apparent vulnerability or distress compel Aaron to comfort or follow Yosef, effectively coercing him into continued engagement. Compliance becomes a strategy for maintaining temporary safety. Economic control primarily contributes to Aaron's vulnerability, because nothing says trapped like student loans and freelance contract. Aaron accepts the job out of financial necessity, and Yosef uses the promise of payment in the framing of the work as meaningful to discourage Aaron from leaving. This dynamic mirrors how financial dependence can trap victims in abusive situations, even when they recognize the risk. Although sexual violence is not depicted on screen, Yosef references past sexually abusive behavior in a manner and reveals entitlement and a lack of remorse. This disclosure signals a broader pattern of boundary violations and reinforces Yosef's use of shock and fear as tools of control. Additionally, Yosef invokes the idea of an unborn child who justifies behavior and elicits sympathy, mirroring how abusers sometimes use children or symbolic responsibilities to excuse or conceal harm. Wow, that is an effective use of baby trapping, Jesus Christ! Aaron's responses to these tactics are consistent with documented victim reactions in IPV situations. He attempts to placate Yosef, minimizes his own fear, and prioritizes de-escalation over confrontation. His politeness and empathy, while socially conditioned, place him at greater risk. Over time, Aaron exhibits signs of psychological distress, including anxiety, hypervigilance, and recurring fear. The consequences of the abuse are emotional, psychological, financial, and ultimately physical, as Yosef's behavior escalates unchecked. Yosef's attitudes reflect beliefs commonly associated with intimate partner violence, including entitlement of others, emotional labor, a lack of accountability, and the belief that vulnerability excuses harmful behavior. He does not take responsibility for his actions and is not held accountable by legal or social systems within this film. The absence of meaningful consequences underscores how coercive control often goes unaddressed until severe harm occurs, highlighting systematic gaps in addressing non-physical forms of violence. Overall, Creep offers a largely accurate portrayal of IPV dynamics despite not exactly having an explicit partner-based relationship. This is displayed particularly in its depiction of coercive control and psychological abuse. It effectively illustrates how manipulation, intimidation, and manufactured intimacy can precede physical violence. While the horror genre compresses time and exaggerates certain elements for dramatic effect, the underlying behaviors align with real-world patterns of abuse. A more nuanced portrayal of institutional responses or longer-term escalation could have further strengthened its realism, but the film succeeds in exposing how dangerous abuse can remain hidden beneath the appearance of vulnerability and charm. The horror of creep isn't the acts, it's the slow erosion of boundaries. It's how easy it is to confuse politeness with safety, charm with goodness, intensity with love. On Valentine's Day, maybe the most radical act isn't grand romance. Maybe it's discernment. Because sometimes the scariest words aren't, "I'm going to hurt you." They're, "Trust me."